loans in less than 14 days. There are 30.7 million small businesses in the United States, and amidst the need to support these small businesses, the US Treasury Department and SBA launched the unprecedented PPP in less than 1 week. So, Mr. Bill, thanks for being on our panel today. Can you please give us the current status on small business loans and resources to small business participants?
Sure, I'm happy to do so, and thank you for having me, Faith, and thank you for everybody for being here today. My name is Bill Briggs, and as Faith said, my title is Deputy Associate Administrator at the SBA Office of Capital Access. In normal times, that the mission of that office is to help small businesses access capital on reasonable rates and terms through our lending partners. And in normal times, our best year, I think, was fiscal year 18 in our 7A program. We did $25 billion. And last year, fiscal year 19, we did over $82 million for our micro lenders. And then we did about $5 billion for our community development corporations who do our 504 loans. Well, as with a lot of things in the last few weeks, the situation has changed drastically. And before I really get into what we have done and the current status of everything, I do want to say that I'm now the person in charge of administering and executing on the Paycheck Protection Program. And quite frankly, my time is in demand. But because of the importance of the National Diversity Council and the importance of reaching the CDFI communities and everything else, this is a priority of our SBA Administrator, Jovita Carranza, and of this administration. And she has made it clear that I'm to participate and do everything I can in order to help CDFIs and help underserved communities benefit from this historic Paycheck Protection Program. So I'm honored to be here, and I really, wouldn't want to miss it. And I'm glad that I really do have the go ahead to do this, because I'm not talking to big business groups. I'm not talking to big banks. I'm talking to the guys like you. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but I'm saying it is so important that we reach your communities. And that is why I'm spending my time with you today. So a few statistics just to give you where we were and where we have come from in the last 6 weeks. We have SBA under our leadership has re-engineered our entire workforce of less than 3,000 personnel and have onboarded thousands of contractors and hundreds of new SBA staff, including lawyers, audit specialists, loan processors, and all sorts of other types of staff to provide economic relief. We have done this all in a social distancing and telework environment. As I said, SBA's 7A loan program went from $25 billion in fiscal 18 to now over $600 billion with the funding that Congress recently reserved for us. SBA will have processed more loans, whether paycheck protection or economic injury disaster assistance, in 6 weeks to the sum of nearly $750 billion when it is all processed in the coming days and weeks. One way to look at that volume of money is that SBA has been what the volume of money that SBA has been processing would make SBA the 6th or 7th largest bank in the United States. That gives you an idea of the scale that we are working for. I'm going to spend the majority of my remarks today talking obviously about the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, but I would also be remiss if I did not mention the economic injury disaster loans and the tremendous job that was done in that. So at the beginning of this national emergency 6 weeks ago, the economic injury disaster loans were the first line of defense for small businesses and nonprofit organizations. And our SBA administrator reviewed and signed 56 governors' requests for disaster assistance declarations in 6 days. To give you an idea, normally in a normal situation, that takes us 7 to 10 days to do one disaster declaration, usually after a tornado or flood. We did 56 in 6 days. For the first time in SBA history, SBA staffed and implemented a nationwide disaster assistance program, including economic relief through deferments. We also created a new grant program, the EIDL Advanced Distribution, and processed first checks within 7 to 8 business days, and we continue to do so. We approved over $8.6 billion in disaster loans in 5 weeks, and we have dispersed nearly $8 billion in 4 weeks above those EIDL advances. So again, that's just one part of what SBA is doing. SBA is not just the Paycheck Protection Program agency. It is also the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and SBA and our Office of Disaster Assistance is doing an amazing job because they are servicing underserved communities with low interest disaster loans and or grants. It's a particular focus of this administration. Obviously, though, a lot of the focus has been on the Paycheck Protection Program, and SBA, in coordination with the Treasury Department, we have been standing side by side working together, created an entirely new small business economic recovery program in 1 week. We oversaw $342 billion in small business lending during the first round of PPP, and we processed more than 14 years worth of loans in 14 days, which will protect over 30 million jobs. We have worked with over 5,300 lenders, including 4,000 community banks, over 1,000 credit unions, over hundreds of CDFIs, 68 farm credit institutions, and prominent non-bank lenders like fintechs, including Intuit, Square, Cabbage, PayPal, and what have you. We have issued 39 policy guidances and 7 interim final rules. So we have been busy, but our focus, particularly with this second round of funding that Congress passed, I can't remember when they passed it, approximately 10 days ago, to the tune of $310 billion. We have been making sure that we're doing everything we can to reach particularly smaller institutions and underserved communities. That is a primary focus, to make sure that the true mom and pops and those communities that might not have access to the funds during the first round of PPP are able to try to get a better shot at getting those PPP loans this time. And we are having success. For instance, on Wednesday of this week, we paused the ability of large lending institutions to process loans from 4 p.m. in the afternoon to essentially midnight. So we gave an 8-hour window where lenders who had assets less than $1 billion in asset size, so essentially small business lenders, had the ability to ensure that they could get their loans into our systems. That was a directive directly from our Treasury Secretary and our SBA administrator to truly benefit small lenders, and it was a success. We also got rid of folks who were using robotic processing systems that essentially strained the capacity of our system and impacted all lenders of all sizes. And so we have been continually, since the second round of PPP funding was authorized, working to improve our loan systems and make sure that we are doing everything we can to help some of our smaller lenders, including the CDFI community, as well as these underserved communities, and how we can best target with them and institutions that have access into those communities. It is a priority of this SBA administrator that we do that. So with that, I'm going to kind of take a breath and allow some questions, Faith, or some engagement if you would like.
Yeah, Bill, we really appreciate you and thank you for showing up here, because these are truly small businesses that are listening to you. I just want to let you know that this Zoom right now is being translated from English to Chinese and English to Hispanic to Spanish. 2 live radio stations right now are covering this, and I know the ethnic television at all. So there are some questions here. The second stimulus of PPP, how are lenders handling loans that did not get funded before the money ran out? What did the lenders do for those who didn't get the funding before it ran out? Will there be a PPP 3?
Well, let's take that question one by one. And I apologize. I haven't slept in weeks, so I know you can't see my face, but you wouldn't want to see my face right now anyway, or at least I don't want it. But let's take the first question. So if you were a small business or nonprofit organization who received funding or applied for the first go around of PPP, and then the funding ran out, your application has not changed. Your lender has probably a queue and is now trying to submit it in this second round. SBA and Treasury did not change the application form. Nothing changed in terms of the information you put, so your loan should still be processed. Now, if you're a small business, I suggest that you ask your lender where they are, ask them if they have an SBA loan number on your loan, and see what they can't do. If they have a status update on where your loan is in the, if they're still waiting for SBA to approve, or did SBA give them a loan number? That is really the important thing. And then there are regulations that guarantee, that Treasury and SBA have instituted, that within 10 days of getting that loan number, the small business should get their loan money. That within 10 days, the lender has to disperse that money within 10 days. So we are still working through. There is still money left in the PPP 2-round fund. So I encourage all of our CDFI lending partners to continue cranking away. We know you are, and continue to do so. We will, as we always do, inform the lending community. We're not trying to surprise the lending community. We are trying to keep them informed. And so we will, as we end this kind of quote unquote pot of money, we will inform the lending community, who will inform and the small business stakeholder community as well, of developments. But right now there's money. So please keep, if you're a lender and you're serving underserved communities in particular, please keep processing those loans and submitting them to our system. We want to help everyone.
Good. And someday you will see how Bill Briggs looks like. He's actually good looking. but but all this, what I'm noticing with this Zoom is guys are growing their COVID beard. Anyway, question number 4. What can I use my PPP loan for, and can independent contractors apply?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So again, the name of the program is Paycheck Protection Program. And the general design and the intent of Congress was to help small business owners and nonprofit organizations, including religious organizations, access these funds to help pay their employee costs. So this would be salary up to $1,000, state and local taxes, and certain employee benefits. Those are all included in the payroll cost definition. So it's not just salary, it's also some additional things as well. It is not federal taxes. I need to be clear on that. You can also, if you use 75% of that loan, or the PPP loan for payroll costs, and then up to 25% for other things, you generally will be eligible to have that loan forgiven. That is what makes it so attractive. This program is also accessible for 1099 contractors or sole proprietors or self-employed. Part of why I'm doing this webinar is to get that message out. If you are a sole proprietor or self-employed, one option for you is to work with online lenders like Square, PayPal, Intuit, Cabbage, and all of that. They are working specifically with that community, as well as many traditional lenders. So there are opportunities, and those folks will help you calculate. On the sba.gov/paycheck protection website, and Faith, please share that with this community. There is a calculator tool based on what type of small business or nonprofit organization that tells you how to do your payroll calculation costs so you can get the loan. But self-employed, sole props, and 1099 contractors are eligible to apply for PPP, and we have guidance on our website how to calculate payroll costs.
And I have 2 more last questions. What is going to be done to improve the current e-tran process? How soon will banks be able to ramp up submissions? What can borrowers and financial institutions do to make the Paycheck Protection Plan process go as smoothly as possible?
That's a great question. And so again, with this second round of Paycheck Protection funding, we were doing everything we can to ensure equality of access for all lenders. So first, when we realized that the robotic systems were impacting our ability and straining our loan processing capacity, we got rid of them. Second, we gave a special window for small lenders to do that too. That has also freed up capacity. We are continually monitoring the system for performance and adapting. That is part of my job, and why I have been not sleeping for weeks, is to do everything we can to make our system work better. But we also instituted a pacing mechanism to ensure that one lender did not have an extreme advantage, so that a large lender with hundreds of employees would able just have their employees sit there all day and load loans into the system and basically hoover up all the money, and so that the small guys would not be able to benefit. So that pacing mechanism is still there, but it has been loosened, and that has, as performance of the system has increased, so that is allowing more loans to go into the system per, by the lenders, and we're seeing positive results as a result.
So my final question, and I know you have to go, but Bill, please get some sleep. We need you. So, so are they going to change their lend? Oh, this is the post PPP. Are they going to change their lending standards to better reflect the stay at home and post stay at home world? There will be viable businesses that can recover at some point when we get to a new normal, but they will have financials that for the next quarter or two may disqualify them from a regular SBA loan. Under current standards, there will be a few, if any, companies qualifying for new SBA loans later this year.
Great question. So I think right now, and again, for purposes of the PPP, that PPP loan is meant to cover an 8-week period of payroll costs. Right now, we are if it seems longer, but the Congress passed that first CARES Act on March 27th, and so we're just 5 weeks into it, and most folks are just really starting to get their loans in mass. I get their funding right now, and they have been for the last 2 weeks. So we're early on in that process, and we are adapting again as every day, both on a policy front as well as an operational front, to do all we can to make this program benefit as many small businesses as possible. But we're also definitely keeping an eye post PPP and all of that about how our overall SBA loan programs can be better serve underserved communities. Again, a particular focus of the SBA Administrator Jovita Carranza right now, as the highest ranking Latino woman in the U.S. federal government. She's very sensitive to making sure that we are hitting underserved communities. And so we will certainly be part of the discussion. And that's where Faith and the National Diversity Council or a coalition come in and are so important to the stakeholder input process, so that we make sure we're considering all perspectives going forward, and we understand how our actions impact certain communities and what we quite frankly need to do better. So Faith, on behalf of everyone at SBA, including our SBA Administrator Jovita Carranza, thank you for your organization, and thank you for everything that you have done. Thank you to all the attendees today. I hope this information was beneficial, and I hope everyone stays safe, and I hope everyone recovers from this challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And please tell Administrator Jovita Carranza we said hello, and tell her also to get some sleep.
All right, will do, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right. So before we go to the SAC panel, I want to introduce to you one of the NDC's members, Mike Vo. He's an attorney, an advocate with a heart for the minority communities, and has an incredible story. Mike?
Great. Thank you, Faith, for the introduction. I hope everyone has enjoyed today's webinar so far. Again, my name is Mike Vo, and I'm the board chair of the nonprofit Pro Nails Association and a partner at the law offices of Mike and Vo, co-sponsors of today's webinar. I'd like to thank the NDC for inviting me to share my family's story of entrepreneurism, hope, and love for one another to get us through this unprecedented time. My parents escaped Vietnam in 1980 with 2 toddlers in a small, cramped boat. They were in search of opportunity to build a better life for their kids. After spending 1 year in a UN refugee camp, my family came to America. My mom, nicknamed Charlie, went to beauty school and immediately started doing fingernails. 1 year after coming to America, with no money and no English skills, she partnered with one of her first nail clients, Olivette, to do hair nails out of Olivette's home garage. Their relationship was unique to say the least. Charlie's a short Vietnamese woman who spoke no English. Olivette is African American and spoke no Vietnamese. Their differences, however, did not matter to them. By the late 1980s, they opened 9 beauty salons and employed over 300 manicurists. While building these 9 salons, Charlie also opened up a beauty supply, and in 1984 opened up her own fingernail manufacturing to provide products to her own salons. By the mid-1990s, over 75% of the nail salons nationwide carried my family's fingernail polish and plastic fingernail tips. Charlie and Olivette are to this day the best of friends. My mom's story was recently released as a book titled Manny Petty, and now a feature film is being developed based on her inspirational story. My parents' business journey, however, was not easy. They had to bootstrap their business growth reinvesting all their profits back into the business. Banking and access to capital were foreign concepts to them. It was not until much later on did they seek outside professional help for banking and finance. Maybe if they sought help earlier, their company could have been 10 or 20 times larger. Today, it is estimated that the nail salon industry is almost $8.5 billion with 55,000 nail salons and 400,000 manicurists nationwide. 40 years later, I still see many small business owners, many of them my own clients, struggle to have banking relationships and reluctant to seek outside money to help grow their businesses. But in the last 4 weeks, I've seen a monumental shift in banking mentality due to the impact of COVID-19. I suspect that the last time this many immigrants felt lost, hopeless, and uncertain was the day they first stepped foot on American soil. If my mom's story can teach us anything about getting through uncertainty, it is that fearlessness, sacrifice, hard work, mutual respect, and love for your neighbor are fundamental traits to not only survive, but succeed. I hope that following today's webinar, many small business owners will not be afraid to ask for help. I do want to remind our viewers again that if you are watching via Zoom, you can submit questions and our panelists will be able to see it. And if you're watching via Facebook, go ahead and submit questions and your Facebook questions will be answered at the conclusion of today's webinar. Thank you, Faith.
Thank you, Mike. Martha and I are heading to a salon the minute they lift up this COVID. See my nails? Very bad now. But this is the beauty of the National Diversity Coalition. I love that story that African American and Asian started a business together and language did not matter, color did not matter. And that's what it should be. There should be no color at all. We're all the same. And before I introduce Martha, I just want to remind you, because, with your story that access to capital with the SBA, if small businesses, especially that were not accepted on PPP, National Asian American Coalition has a neighborhood relief program. So you can text NAAC to 90407. So let me introduce the beautiful Martha Miller. She's office. Hold on for a second. I have to give you a really good introduction.
All right, I'm here. I'm ready.
Okay, this Zoom, sorry, make some mistakes, but I'd like to introduce Director Martha Miller of the Office of the Advocate for Small Business Capital Formation of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Everyone is scared of SEC, but Martha is great. So don't be scared. So Martha, I'm going to give you 5 minutes and please talk about SEC because I can tell you the people that are listening and are hearing have not even heard of who SEC is. What does SEC got to do with my life? So please take it away.
Thank you, Faith. And Mike, thank you for sharing the story of Charlie and all of that. It's inspiring and one that I think there's a lot of people listening that wish that they could get back to business as usual and supporting folks like your mom and her business partner. I think Faith included from her comments. But I just want to thank the National Diversity Coalition for convening this really important conversation. The SEC in our office has a different perspective and one that's a corollary to what we heard from Bill Briggs sharing with the Small Business Administration. We are focused on access to investor capital. What you see on the screen right here is a link. You can hover your phone over that QR code or head to www.sec.gov/OASB. And you can download a copy of the report that we delivered in December to Congress and to the Securities and Exchange Commission. But before we dive into that, what I wanted to do is, we've done hundreds of outreach events. And so there's a couple of common questions that we almost invariably get from folks. Who are you and why do you care about my business? The next question is, okay, talk to me about how much money we're talking about. And then the third one is, so how can I explore as a small business potentially doing business with the SEC? Those are the top 3 questions we get from small businesses. So I want to briefly explore those and then happy to take some Q&A and dive into more detail. So I think the first one, who are you at the SEC and why do you care about my business? Most people think about the Securities and Exchange Commission and they only think about public companies. They're used to hearing about the SEC in the context of regulation of our stock markets and large companies, but they don't necessarily think about the impact the SEC has on smaller businesses. but we care very much so about the access to investor capital. So when you go out and raise money, not from a bank loan, but from an investor who owns a piece of your company, and we create the rules through which you can raise capital. Our office, Faith read the very long title of our office. I think it's the longest title in the entire agency. We like to joke in our office, long title, big mission. But our office was established at the beginning of 2019 to advocate for solutions that can make sure that the rules by which you raise capital work really well for businesses from the earliest stage until you have hit major success, like Mike's mom's company and Mike's company that he was highlighting, all the way until you are going public, and then when you're a smaller public company. So it's a broad scope, and we assist businesses as they try to navigate the different tools and pathways to raising capital. Our office has a particular focus on unique challenges that are faced by women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. And so it's critical that we hear those perspectives and that we help to raise those across the commission and with Congress. And we're regularly called on to give feedback about just how potential changes might impact different groups, not just broad populations of businesses as a whole. So the question that you were probably hoping I could skip to, and if there was a fast forward button, you would have skipped straight ahead to how much money do you give out, which is a question that right now people want to know more than ever. And the answer is $0. And you might be wondering, well, then why am I paying attention to someone that has $0 to give out? And the reason is that when money goes out of the SEC, it's in a separate pot, and that's usually for whistleblower awards and then for restitution of harm to investors. But the piece that you should care about is that when we talk about dollars that we're looking at things in trillions of dollars. So there are trillions of dollars raised every year in the public markets by public companies, as well as in the private markets. And there are lots of different transactions that come together. The average is just over $1 million that's raised in the private markets, and that's the average. On Reg D transactions, which is one of the pathways that companies can use. But I flag that to say that companies raise a lot of money in smaller chunks, relatively speaking, than the large dollar amounts that you're used to hearing about in the public markets, and we're very involved there. We can highlight later. I think that Faith wanted to ask some questions about some proposed changes, so I'll save those for a little bit. But when you are looking at raising capital, our agency and our office is here to support you and to make sure that you know how to navigate the different pathways available so that you can ultimately be successful when you're looking to bring in capital from investors. And then that third question I highlighted. So how can my company, if you're a small business and you're a potential contractor with the government, how could you explore doing business with the SEC? I would point you towards, particularly if you're a minority-owned business, to reach out to our Office of Minority and Women's Affairs. So our OMWI office is wonderful. Our Office of Minority and Women Inclusion, they do a lot working with contractors to bring them into the process to engage smaller businesses. Their website is sec.gov/OMWI, OMWI. There's an OMWI office at most of the large financial agencies, and so I encourage you to reach out to them. They have a wonderful team that can put you in touch with resources. So those are the top 3 questions, and Faith, I'll turn it back over to you. But before I do, I want to share with you some of our contact info so that you can engage with us. We have a website that you can go to that has a number of different resources, including some videos that are short that show what are some of the changes that are happening. You can email us directly to set up some time for a conversation. And then, of course, we're on social media like everybody else is. So look forward to engaging with you, and I hope that you'll reach out to us.
Thank you, Martha. So here are some questions. What are the regulations that SEC loosen up on to provide access to capital?
So that's a great question, Faith. And we've recently been looking at a number of different things agency-wide that can improve the framework by which companies raise capital and by which investors support those companies and ultimately generate wealth through supporting not only public companies, but private companies. One of those was proposed in December, and that's the definition of accredited investor. That's a term you might have heard in the context of who's eligible to invest in most private company offerings. That's one where it's generally tied to wealth as a proxy for sophistication. And we have proposed some changes that would add in some additional means of qualifying that aren't just tied to your income and your net worth. But the one that is probably more exciting for a lot of participants here, and we've got some information about it on our website, is the capital formation proposal that came out in March. It came out right as COVID-19 was really sending everybody into a little bit of a tailspin, figuring out how to relocate home and shut down businesses. But we want to make sure that folks have a sense of what's in there. It includes a number of changes that are intended to make the rules work more smoothly as you look at the different options. So for example, it includes a proposed increase to how much money a company could raise using crowdfunding. Particularly during the current environment, we've heard a lot of companies say that they have a base of customers and neighbors who want to help support them. And crowdfunding is a really interesting tool that they could use that would provide additional capital from PPP programs and other loan-based programs. And so there's some proposed changes that could make that work a little bit better. There's also some clarification if you're familiar with demo days, where a young company can get up and pitch to potential investors and talk about their company and why you should invest in them. We've proposed some clarity to make it clear that you can do that. So lots of really important changes that can make it a much smoother process for companies to raise capital and for investors to support them. But here's the critical piece. We need to hear from you on what you think about them and if we have gotten them right, or if you think there's additional changes needed. And we would love to hear from NDC members about what you think about the rules. I'll point you to our webpage, and we put the link up just a minute ago, which is sec.gov/OASB. We have some videos, including a 3.5-minute video. It is short and sweet. It's also on our SEC's Twitter account and social media that breaks down just what's in there and tells you a little bit about how you can engage and share your voice and comment on that rule so that you can tell us if we've gotten it right and what other changes we need to make as we look at final rules.
Thank you, Martha. I agree with Martha. They really want to hear from us. If you go to Washington, D.C. and SEC building, they're so way up there. It's so hard to go in. But I know their chairman, Jay Clayton, always wants to hear from the people on the ground. And they will not make a lot of changes unless we let them know. So I'm really encouraging all of you, whatever it is, there's really no bad or wrong, right or wrong question. Go on their website, and I know they're very good in looking at that website and responding and gathering all the information. So when they're changing policy, Martha and Julie and their group will suggest that, especially for the small businesses. So please don't be scared of SEC. They're actually very friendly.
Yes.
So, question number 2, what does it mean to bring an investor into your company or to sell equity instead of taking out a loan or self-financing?
I think that's a great question. And that's one that is really important as a business owner and you're thinking about sources of capital. So when you're looking at something like whether it's the PPP program or a loan that's backed just by your bank, you're looking at receiving capital from somebody else, and then you pay back the principal plus interest. But once you've paid it back, you still own your company. When you're taking on investor equity, what you're looking at is actually selling a portion of your company. And it's not something where you just pay it back and then that investor is no longer an owner in your company. It's equivalent to a marriage. And you need to think about it as a long-term commitment together. And so it goes to really making sure you have the right investors that are a part of your company and really knowing the terms on which you're agreeing to go into that relationship together. And that's a very important distinction to make sure that you fully appreciate as you're looking at potentially taking on investor equity.
Great. Can you identify some frauds currently happening that our viewers can watch out for?
Happy to. So the first thing that I will do is identify a resource, because the best thing that you can do is make sure that is to really just know what tools are in your toolkit. And so I will highlight investor.gov. We have an incredible investor education team, And they have put together a lot of resources. And it is important, if you are looking at making any sort of investment decision, that you really understand your risk tolerance as well as who you're investing in. So I'll start there, because you need to be an informed investor when you're looking at taking any money that you have earned and putting it behind somebody else's company. I think the number one thing that I would caution people is, somebody tells you that they have a zero risk guaranteed return, pause and ask questions, because there's almost no such thing as a zero risk guaranteed return. Whether you're talking about somebody that says, I've got a surefire solution that's going to solve COVID-19, pause, ask questions, check in on that person and check in on that company and make sure that it is legitimate, and do your homework, because anybody that is promising you a guaranteed return is likely glossing over a number of different risks and factors that you need to be thinking about. We have a number of different resources on investor.gov that can help you spot different risk indicators. But that guaranteed return one is the one that is really particularly challenging. And we've also got, I will flag, a COVID-19 monitoring group. We have recently shut down trading with a number of companies related to COVID-19. We're trying to take proactive steps and monitor the market to make sure that bad actors are not taking advantage of the current situation, and people who have good intentions to support a company that says that they are, whether they're producing PPE or they're claiming to have a vaccine, but they don't. We're trying to make sure that those folks are not out in the market, but it is critical that you also do your homework as an investor and make sure that you are asking the right questions.
Good. And Mike, if you have questions too, let me. One more question here. How do you see yourselves assisting small businesses as it relates to the securities market? What can banks, nonprofits, and small businesses do to reach out to SEC, or what ways we can partner?
Absolutely. So I will say, from our office, we're an advocacy office. We are here to champion and make sure that you have the tools that you need to be successful. And if the tools aren't working for you, we want to make sure that we propose changes to those tools that make them really effective. And so I would say the first thing that you can do is use your voice and actually reach out. We do want to hear from you. There's a reason that we put our contact info in an email for our team, smallbusiness@sec.gov, on the screen. It's because we want to hear from you. And if you do have an issue and you're encountering a roadblock when you are trying to
Oops. Somebody, hold on.
for your lawyers, we unfortunately don't get you out of having to hire a legal team that can help you, but we can help point you in the right direction and provide clarity and guidance. Because at the end of the day, we really want you to be successful.
Great. I think we lost, did we lose Martha there for a few seconds? I think.
Yeah,
Did you lose me?
we lost you for about 10 seconds in there, Martha. Right when a slide came on, and we lost you for about 10 seconds after that.
Oh goodness. Well, I don't know exactly what I was saying then, because I'm not going off of a script. So that will just disappear forever, that portion of the presentation.
I just have a question, my personal question, Martha. Is it time to invest when we want to open the economy? People are saying, oh, everything is like on hold. What's just your opinion on that?
My opinion on that, that's a hard one, because that is such an individual decision on when is it the time to invest. That really has a lot to do with your personal risk tolerance. I think the best thing that I can advise people on is find somebody who can guide you, who spends their time working with the markets. Find an investment advisor or a broker dealer who can support you. We have a broker check tool that can make sure, if you do find somebody that says that they can support you and wants to help you navigate investing options, make sure to check that person out on investor.gov with our broker check. But there's no such, it's really hard for me to make a claim of it's a bad time to invest or a good time to invest, because our markets are very dynamic. They move. And they change each day. And so I won't pretend to give any wonderful investment advice today, but I do think it is a wonderful opportunity if you are thinking about investing to understand the tools available to you and to reach out to somebody that can help to guide you through that process.
Mike, do you have one question before I do my closing?
Just for Martha. So if, let's say I have clients, they've been approached for investments, they invested and it just didn't turn out right. Would you recommend that those folks go directly to the SEC first or to a local agency to report problems related to potential fraud?
Anytime you have an issue with potential fraud, reach out. And we coordinate very closely as an agency. We have a large enforcement and compliance team. They work very closely with your local and state regulators, as well as with the Department of Justice. If there is a fraud issue, we want to hear about it. So what I would say is if you suspect fraud or an issue, reach out to the SEC, and we want to make sure that somebody is looking into that.
Great, thank you.
Great. Well, we've come to the end of our webinar. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you again to our essential workers who are working around the clock to serve our country well. Thank you, Mike, for inspiring us with your story. And thank you, everyone who is restreaming this event. I want to acknowledge all the banks that have worked around the clock to accommodate the massive loan applications for PPP, Payroll Protection Plan. Special acknowledgement to Secretary Mnuchin and SBA Administrator Jovita Carranza for fighting to save over 30 million jobs. And of course, our deepest gratitude to Director Martha Miller and Bill Briggs, who proved to us that SEC and SBA is undeniably here in both the good times and bad times. According to the US Department of Labor, more than 26 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits since mid-March. This may push the jobless rate from 3.5 in February to a whopping 20% or higher. The economy shrunk by an annualized rate of 4.8 in the first quarter of 2020 as the coronavirus pandemic forced millions of Americans out of work and thousands across the country to shelter. But National Diversity Coalition still feels optimistic because although this is one of the toughest challenges your business will ever face, we know that us being here, sharing resources, collaborating with our government, and making collective sacrifices, we will rise to this moment. And with the grace of God, we will beat this together. I thank everyone that contributed here, the NDC Board of Directors, the committee, Pramod and Christine. Thank you so much. And also the KOI Printing, the radio stations, the Sound of Hope. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure being with you all today. Thank you and have a great COVID weekend. What can I say? Goodbye all. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, Mike. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, Mike.
Bye.
Oh, cool. I think we're
Still live.
we're still live, but this is cool. And Martha left already.